We just witnessed a drama. Yes? I didn't because I wasn't here. What was the subject? Who was Gopal Chapala? Who played Gopal Chapala? From a medicinal perspective, he's completely cured of leprosy. This is the power of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. This is one of the more prominent pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is told in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and also referred to in Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, because of the crucial message that it carries. Psychology is one of the sciences of medicine, but it is also a very important study in order to actually imbibe Vaishnava character. What was the psychology of Gopal Chapala and that of Srivas Thakur? Their values were completely opposite, although essentially they were both trying to achieve the same thing. Everyone is trying to achieve real fulfillment. Anandamayo Bhyashat. But according to what we are influenced by, we seek our fulfillment in various ways. Srivas Thakur was seeking fulfillment under the influence of his eternal soul. In other words, his actions, his words, were the manifestations of the quality of his eternal soul. Jivara Swarupoy Krishna de Nityadas. The nature of the Atma is to find fulfillment in giving Krishna fulfillment. When you water the root of the tree, every part of the tree is satisfied. Of that food goes to every limb and organ of the body. So he was motivated by unconditional love. Gopal Chapala was being influenced by the ahankar, by the false ego. And he was seeking fulfillment. Interesting is the disease, or the symptom of the disease of Gopal Chapala manifested as envy. Why envy? Generally, we envy someone who has something in common with us. Gopal Chapala was a Brahmin, a scholar. He was a sort of spiritual leader in Navadvip. Srivas Thakur, very simple, humble person, but he was gaining a tremendous amount of respect and honor from others. Gopal Chapala, he had a particular interpretation of Brahminical culture and the conclusions of the Vedas. And that was, if you want to make true spiritual progress, you have to study, you have to be scholarly, you have to discriminate between matter and spirit, and you have to submit yourself to the Brahmins. And if you submit yourself to Brahman, if they bless you, you can take your next birth as a Brahman and make progress. It just so happened Gopal Chapala was a Brahmin. And here was Srivas. He and the others, they were speaking that the conclusion of all the knowledge of all the Vedas is to surrender to Vasudeva. Bahunam janmanam mante jnanavamam prapadyate Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma saturlava. After many births and deaths and births and deaths and births and deaths, when you finally come to the actual culmination of true knowledge, you surrender to Vasudeva, knowing that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes and all that is. Sarva dharman parityasya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayi samima sucha. To abandon all varieties of dharma, occupation, religion, and just surrender to me, Krishna says. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions, have no fear. Srivas was seeing every living being as the eternal servant of Krishna, and wanted to inspire everyone to attain the perfection of all knowledge, loving devotional service. And he had complete faith in the Vedic conclusion. Harinama, Harinama, Harinameva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatir Anyata. That by simply chanting the name of Hari, one can attain the ultimate perfection of life. One of Srivas's very, very best friends was Haridas Thakur, who was, from a caste perspective, an untouchable. For the caste smarta Brahmins like Gopal Chapala, Haridas Thakur was untouchable, unseeable. If his shadow touched your house, you had to wash your whole house with cow dung before you could even go in it again. That was how strict he was. And here Srivas was inviting Haridas in, having kirtan with him, embracing him. And he was teaching common people who had no real qualifications as far as he was concerned, that you can attain perfection of life just by dancing and singing. Gopal Chapala genuinely in his heart felt that Srivas Thakur was ruining the very society. But worst of all, and the reason he was so convinced of it, was not on the basis of a philosophy. It was on the basis of his envy. Because Srivas was gaining so much. You see, we see the world through our particular state of consciousness. If that envy of the ego is allowed to flourish within our consciousness, then we rationalize and see, perceive, and interpret everything in the cloud of that envy. And we can genuinely be convinced of it. He was seeing Srivas as a genuine enemy of Vedic culture. And he could take so many instances to prove it, and even take so many verses of the scriptures to justify it, because he was seeing through his envy. So his decision was, I must destroy him. So you showed what he did in the drama?
Yes.
Okay. He took all kinds of abominable things and put it in front of Srivas's house at night while the kirtan was going on. And Srivas, he didn't know what was happening. And the idea was, in the next morning when people see this in front of the house, Gopal Chapala, his plan was, then they would think that he was performing these very low-class types of rituals for those who are really superstitious people in the mode of ignorance, and his name would be completely defamed. But Srivas had no envy and had no pride. He only wanted to please Krishna. And therefore, he had no fear. Vajahure mana Srinanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare. When we take shelter of Krishna, there's nothing to fear, because we put ourselves in Krishna's hands. So he came out and saw all this, and he actually called the people of Navadvip and said, actually, you may not have known, but this is what I do every night. He actually admitted to something he never did. But nobody believed him. They thought, oh, he's just so humble, somebody did this and now he's admitting it. So the people, they cleaned everything and purified it. But Gopal Chapala, because of this aparad, he got leprosy. In those days, leprosy, because contagious, you weren't allowed to live among the people of society. You were banished. So not only was he totally suffering physically, his fingers fell off, his nose fell off, his toes fell off. He was becoming emaciated, deformed, but his family and the rest of society kicked him out. He had nowhere to go. He was just living somewhere in a distant place on the bank of the Ganges, all alone. Nobody would even talk to him. Miserable state. So he became somewhat repentant, but not enough. Lord Chaitanya went by one day and he said, oh, please save me, please save me. And Lord Chaitanya said, because of what you have done to Srivas, you will remain like this for 1,000,000 births. And he walked away. He said that out of compassion. He said that out of love for Srivas's soul, for Gopal Chapala's soul. Because he knew that he had to deeply understand the offense. What we learn from this is anybody could say, I'm sorry, because they want to avoid some reaction. But that's not what liberates us from the offense. The only thing that will truly liberate from our offense is from the core of our hearts, when we really want to change. Very important message. He was suffering, he was crying, he was begging, but Lord Chaitanya understood. He just wants to get out of what he's done. but he doesn't really understand from his heart. He's still envious. But he did change in due course of time. So the greatest blessing for Gopal Chapala was leprosy. As far as Srivas was concerned, he always liked Gopal Chapala. He was praying. When Gopal Chapala got leprosy, he was praying for Gopal Chapala's liberation. He had no feeling in the slightest of anger, animosity, revenge. He was a well-wisher. Because he had taken shelter of Krishna. These are the qualities of one who takes shelter of Krishna. It's not just about wearing a sari or tilak or shaving your head or putting some beads on. This is what a Vaishnava is. Srila Prabhupada explains the prominent quality of a Vaishnava is that they have no envy because they take shelter of Krishna. The deepest disease of the heart is envy. If we love Krishna, we cannot be envious of anything. If we're envious of Krishna, we're potentially envious of everybody and anyone if the circumstances are favorable. So that leprosy caused him to really reflect and deeply understand how good Srivas really was and how wrong he was. So for Gopal Chapala, when he was sitting on the bank of the river with leprosy, he was nothing but suffering. I am this body, I am suffering, and why is this happening to me? Until the point came where he realized that I have nothing but the shelter of the Lord left. And then he developed total faith in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. On his way, in his first visit to Vrindavan, at least his first attempted visit, he personally came to Navadvip, to a place called Kulia. And there Gopal Chapala, Gopal Chakravarti, and so many others who had previously made serious, grave offenses to the Lord and the devotees, they came to see him. Devananda Pandit. Gopal Chapala from a distance. He wanted to approach the Lord, and the Lord saw him and called him forward. He said, "You have offended Srivas Thakur. Go to get his forgiveness." Srivas had already forgiven him. But the honesty and sincerity of his approaching him is what was going to heal him of his disease. And Srivas just blessed him with so much love and affection. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not only healed his body of leprosy, but healed his heart of the disease of envy. And when the heart becomes healthy, prema pumarta mahan. Ecstatic love of God is our nature. That's our healthy condition. If we're not weeping in ecstasy when we see the forms of Radha Gopinath, if our hairs are not standing on end and our limbs are not trembling when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, that means we're not healthy. Good health is Satchidananda, to love Krishna, to realize the bliss, the ecstasy of loving Krishna. So he became truly healthy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes to this world because he sees the potential in every living being. He comes to awaken that potential. And a devotee or a true Vaishnava is one who shares the vision of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada, when he came to New York and San Francisco and Montreal and London, and then he started traveling around the world and came to Mumbai, he would like a doctor, he very strongly pointed out what are the diseases. And sometimes he pointed out who was spreading these diseases. But he was doing it with compassion, in that spirit of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not to condemn, but to cure, to purify. And because he had that consciousness, and he saw so much hope, he saw such a spark of spiritual potential in all of us, he empowered us to overcome all of our unwanted desires and habits and become pure devotees of the Lord. It was him seeing that goodness, even though it may have been obscured by so much lust and envy and anger and pride, arrogance and greed and so many illusions. He saw it there. And he helped us to believe it was there and gave us the medicine to restore it. That is Vaishnava, that is bhakti. Gopal Chapala was embraced by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The leprosy of his physical disease and the leprosy of egoistic disease was cured. And he became a great saint. I believe he was initiated with the name Devaki Nandan Das. And he wrote beautiful songs and poems. And in his most beautiful poem, he's glorifying the Lord's devotees. Every devotee, from every country, whatever the sex, whatever the color, whatever the nationality, whatever the occupation, whatever the caste, he's worshiping and putting his head with all humility in the feet of every devotee. This was the symptom of a healthy heart. Transformation. This is the power of the holy name of Krishna. This is the power of the association of Vaishnavas. This is the power of bhakti. The tendency, you see, because Srivas Thakur was so kind to him, and because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was on the planet giving such extraordinary mercy, that's why he got leprosy immediately.